Blue Mage has been one of the most controversial topics to hit Final Fantasy XIV, since the realization that 1.0 probably wasn't actually a finished game. But this so-called limited job has finally hit the live servers, so in this video I'll be going over my experiences for the first half of the current leveling journey, getting from 1 to 25. So hey guys, it's Hunt for Games, bringing you a healthy mix of videos on new releases and MMOs, and nostalgia trips for the classics that made us fall in love with games in the first place. So let's get right into my thoughts on Blue so far in Final Fantasy XIV, because as a lover of Final Fantasy XI, I have to be honest, I had a real roller coaster of emotions when they announced Blue and its implementation in 14. So first off with the obvious, by the time of making this, there are countless level 50 Blues. I myself have spent less than 5 or so hours leveling it completely solo, and I'm up to level 25. Rested XP is definitely helping a bit there, and it'll slow a bit the higher I get, but that's pretty fast, especially considering I've done 0 quests, dungeons, or obviously roulettes. It's kind of bizarre. It's a very different experience so far from what I've come to expect in 14, but not an unpleasant one. At first, I was just thrilled to start thinking about camps and what level ranges different enemies were, to explore nooks and crannies of 14 that I haven't visited in ages, to get a great little setup of enemies and start mowing them down. It was such an 11 thought process. What enemies will pose the least threat but be condensed enough to cut down on running around to gather them up. But the initial thrill of that has worn off a bit. I'm still enjoying the hunt for efficient monsters and visiting areas unseen for ages, but you're never in an area for long, and you can just sort of tell that the game wasn't set up around that idea. Pull an enemy too far from its buddies and it'll lose interest in you. It can get kind of frustrating if you're trying to get it to a safe spot. An area that seems like a great cluster of perfectly leveled enemies might suddenly be crushed by a spawning fate, which is good XP in itself, but somewhat jarring to my relaxing mob crunch. I mean, something about it just seems off, but then again, it's still a quick moving and enjoyable leveling experience. And the combat up till now has been so far removed from any other job in 14 that it keeps things fresh. Not because there's, any kind of complexity or newness in a rotation that we're used to, but because of the complete lack of that. There is no rotation, there are only spells. I have buffs, debuffs, stun moves, draw-ins, AoEs, sleeps, damage buffs, and I can use each at any time that's most beneficial to me. This means sometimes I'm spamming a single target damage spell over and over again, but also that I'm free to try and get creative with pulling and crowd control to tackle multiple enemies at once if I think that that's the fastest way for me to level. Weave in as many buffs or debuffs as I think are appropriate for the fight, self-heals if things get dicey. Look, I'm not saying it's the most exciting collection of abilities and spells I've ever seen, but it's been nice to use these spells on a per-need basis rather than to satisfy a rotation. It feels very much like the MMOs of yesteryear, especially if you find yourself fighting enemies far above your own level, which sometimes you might if you're hunting for spells. Which brings us to the spell hunting, which has been interesting so far. Much like Blue Mage in Final Fantasy XI, the goal is to travel the world following the vague directions of your blue magic grimoire to hunt down the learnable spells. Sometimes these are specific or even multiple movesets from an enemy type, or sometimes they're unique to a single version of an enemy, like LevQuest Cactuars using 1000 needles versus the wandering open world level 26 Cactuars that stick to 100 needles. If you see the moveset, even if you avoid the damage, you have a chance to learn it. For the most part, this has happened within a few minutes, if not immediately, but some have taken significantly more time. As someone who likes to get as many spells as possible before continuing, I've hunted down everything I can conceivably get, but I'll admit, I've been doing it all solo. As it was portrayed, most of these spells can be soloed fairly easily by a lone blue. And while that's not the only way to approach it, outside of the dungeon spells I've missed, I haven't really felt like I should be grabbing anyone else. While I'm sorry to continue making the comparison to Final Fantasy XI, I think it sort of explains why grouping feels so backwards for me in 14. In 11, sometimes a spell you need to learn was many levels above your own. It would be impossible to kill alone, and frankly, this was super annoying, because you often needed that spell to be an effective member of the party. But that drive to be the effective member of the party, to have every tool at your disposal available to you, drove you to hunt that spell down no matter how difficult it may be. So you would group up because you wanted that spell earlier than you could get it solo. Or maybe you could easily get it solo, but you saw another blue hunting the same move in the area. Ultimately, repops could be kind of a bit of a pain, so it made sense to group up temporarily and work towards that same goal. I mean, you could both learn it, and you kind of had to do it that way because you couldn't just learn it from somebody else claiming it. But 14 doesn't really agree with any of that so far. I mean, leveling has been so quick that you don't really notice if you're missing a spell. Well, this could change later on because you're so easily capable of soloing anyway. It's only you who'll suffer if you choose to wait to grab a spell until later. You don't even have to worry about other party members being let down for you missing a spell or not fitting into whatever strategy they had in mind, because you don't really need to level in a party. While there are certainly benefits to this, I mean, it's way less stressful for one, it does kill that "I need this spell no matter how hard it might be right now" drive. But difficulty aside, even if you show up and find a million blues killing what you're after, and believe me, there is a ton of that situation right now, you can still stand to learn the spell. Just engage the enemy that somebody else is fighting and claimed, do a little bit of damage with your auto attack, and you can still learn it, even if you weren't the first claim. This means I don't even necessarily have to ask someone if they need or even want help. I can just start smacking the mob for my own benefit, and there's nothing they can do to stop me. Which of course has also led to my next point, a serious amount of intentional or unintentional griefing. So many players are still new to this concept, especially in 14, and have only ever known the idea of murder, kill that enemy down as fast as you can. That is kind of the drive most of the time in 14 for your method of efficiency. The faster you can kill, the better. If you didn't get what you were after that first time, try killing it again until you do. But with blue magic, it makes a lot of sense to leave the enemy alive as long as possible until it uses this spell. Otherwise, it was a meaningless fight. I mean, unless you're trying to balance leveling and learning, but that all depends on your overall goal. I bring all this up because anyone walking up trying to learn a spell might be a little more impatient than you and just kill it, like immediately. Players were getting a little ticked off in the area I was in. I saw a few shouting over and over again, "Stop using water cannon, leave them alive," and saying things like, "Oh, these players will never learn, they don't want to learn. I've been shouting this all day." First off, the community is new to this. I'd like to give everyone a bit more of a chance than literally people's first 20 minutes with the experience on day one. But second off, there's no denying that these players are intentionally trying to keep these enemies alive and can do nothing to stop a random passerby from helpfully murdering it into oblivion. It's just kind of weird, and it can be frustrating if you just can't seem to learn a new spell and new players keep running in the area and quickly striking down your prey. Now, this should in theory lead to some of that communication that I'd hoped it would cultivate, classic MMO stuff where veterans to an experience try to help new people, and the community works together towards shared goals. But 14 can be so fast and push that efficiency of that constant speed at you that players rarely stick around long enough for that discourse to start outside of a quick "stop" and shout. They run up to an enemy somebody else is fighting, attack it, maybe learn the spell, and then run off. I mean, there's no chance there to be like, "Wait, I think you did that wrong. I got screwed there." So I brought all this up saying that it really has been much of a solo experience, but it doesn't have to be that way, and it's not to say it wouldn't be more fun in a group. My next step will definitely be to try to create a group myself and see what that grouping experience is like, especially to go back to a couple of the dungeon related spells that I skipped over, because I mean, a final dungeon boss offering up a new spell is the perfect reason to grab 3 other blues and see what we can make happen. So I mean, overall, if I had to summarize my experiences with blue so far, I'd say it's been refreshing. It's been a very different approach to 14 and offered up a few of the things that I've been asking for so long. Reasons to explore the open world, more focus on what enemy I'm actually fighting and the abilities it's using, even if so far this has been in kind of small doses. But there's no denying that it's gone by super fast so far, and for better or worse, I've had little reason to communicate with other players or form any kind of lasting party. We'll see how that changes as I continue my quest towards the current level cap of 50, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Whether you've tried Blue Mage out or not, is its implementation in 14 an interesting or lackluster approach? Outside of the obvious downsides of it being a limited job, how do you feel about this style of spells and movesets in the world of Final Fantasy XIV? I'm still on the fence myself, and I think I'll need the full road to 50 to start collecting my thoughts, but I can't wait to hear yours. Question of the week: what is your worst story of accidentally ruining another player's day in an MMO? Keep on the lookout for more Final Fantasy XI and 14 videos, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in more videos like this, think about subscribing. And if you already have, don't forget to click that little bell next to the sub button to get notified when new videos go live. Hit me up in the comments with your thoughts on this video, or come hang out and chat with me on Twitch every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And definitely look me up on Twitter or Instagram and Hunt for Games to keep up with what else I've got going on. See ya.